Hey everyone, welcome back to HOA Story Files. Today's story is about an HOA board member, Karen, who decided to call the cops on me, all because she thought my boat violated her precious HOA bylaws. What she didn't realize? I actually own the marina, and my property isn't even part of her HOA. Let's get into it. The story begins like this. I've always loved boats. I practically grew up on the water. My earliest memories are helping my dad patch up old hulls and tagging along with my uncle for weekend lake rides. My family has run a small marina for decades, and as the only kid for a long time, I spent my entire childhood surrounded by boats, oil, and sea air. By the time I was a teenager, I could tie knots blindfolded and fix just about any outboard motor that sputtered its last. When my dad retired, he passed the marina on to me. I did try leaving once. Went to college far inland and even took a dull desk job for a year. But I missed the smell of salt water, the sound of engines humming, and the peace that comes from working with your hands. So I came home. The marina isn't what it once was. Smaller staff, fewer boats, but still running strong. We have about 20 slips, a small fueling dock, and an office that I converted into my home. It's humble, quiet, and mine. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Next door, though, is a luxury neighborhood that sprouted up years after my family built the marina. It's the kind of place filled with manicured lawns, fancy cars, and people who think their HOA rules are federal law. The problem is, my land predates their HOA. I'm completely separate. Different zoning, different jurisdiction, zero connection. Earlier this year, I finally retired my old boat. The poor thing had served me well for years but was falling apart, leaky hull, sputtering motor, the works. So I treated myself to a new one, a sleek white beauty that looked amazing sitting on my dock. That's when trouble started. One morning, as I was checking the lines, a woman strutted up to the gate of my dock and called out, "Is that your boat?" She introduced herself as the HOA president and wasted no time telling me my new boat was an eyesore and blocked the view from her residents' backyards. I calmly explained that I wasn't part of her HOA and that the land and dock were privately owned. I even pointed at the large sign that clearly said, "Private Marina, no trespassing," but she wasn't listening. She told me I'd be fined if I didn't remove the boat within a week. I laughed and told her she was welcome to try. A few days later, 2 police officers showed up at my door. They said there'd been a report of an illegally parked boat on residential property. I knew immediately who had made the call. Still, I stayed polite. I showed them every bit of paperwork: my deed, business license, marina registration, and the boat's ownership documents. Everything was in perfect order. Both officers apologized, said I was clear, and left. I figured that would be the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. Over the next several weeks, I had a parade of inspectors show up unannounced, city officials, environmental agents, and even a fire marshal once. Each one came with some bogus complaint about my property. One guy said someone reported that I was improperly storing gasoline. Another claimed I was building a dock without a permit. Every time I showed them the same paperwork. Every time they realized it was all nonsense. A few of them even admitted they were getting sick of being sent on false calls from that same neighborhood. But the worst part came when I noticed my marina business taking a hit. Fewer regulars, fewer boats coming in. When I asked one of my loyal customers what was going on, she pulled up an HOA newsletter on her phone. It warned residents to avoid the nearby marina because it was under investigation for unsafe practices. That's when it clicked. The HOA was actively trying to sabotage my business, spreading rumors that I was running something shady out of my home. Another client told me the same woman, the HOA president, had told him I was illegally operating a private port. That was the moment I stopped being just irritated. I was done playing nice. You don't mess with a man's reputation. Dealing with endless bogus inspections was one thing. But when those stunts started scaring off my marina's customers and hitting my income, that crossed a line. At first, I kept trying to convince myself to let it go. Maybe she'd get bored eventually. Maybe her obsession would burn itself out. I'm not the confrontational type. Raised voices make me nervous, and lawsuits sound like a headache I'd rather avoid. So I kept my head down, hoping the storm would pass. But instead, it got worse. It started with strange people from the neighboring HOA community showing up at odd hours, wandering around the edges of my dock like they were inspecting the place. A few even asked bizarre questions. One guy strolled up and asked for the key to the kayak rack. I blinked at him and said, "Buddy, I don't even have a kayak rack." He looked shocked and told me it was part of his HOA membership. Apparently, the HOA was charging residents for Marina access. That was new. A few days later, another resident stopped by, waving a printed receipt showing he'd paid an extra fee for a boat slip, which, to my disbelief, was actually my personal slip. He thought it was part of his neighborhood perks. That's when the alarm bells really started ringing. The HOA president wasn't just spreading rumors anymore. She was selling fake access to my property. I couldn't believe it. First, she'd sabotaged my business with lies about unsafe conditions. Now she was running a side hustle off my marina. I was furious, but I still tried to think rationally. Maybe I'd just send her a legal cease and desist letter, or contact the HOA board quietly. I didn't want a full-on war. At least not yet. Then the situation exploded. One of my regulars told me it would be his last visit because, according to the HOA president, the marina was closing soon and would become an exclusive community amenity. I was stunned. That's when I decided to start digging, and what I found made my blood boil. While browsing local listings, I stumbled across a real estate ad for a house in that same HOA neighborhood. The listing proudly claimed that the home includes private access to an exclusive marina. The accompanying photo? My dock, my property, my boat sitting in the background. That was it. No more sitting back. I called the real estate agent listed in the ad. She sounded confused at first, then admitted that the HOA president had told her the marina was part of the neighborhood's amenities package. That's when I realized I needed to go nuclear. I started gathering every shred of evidence I could find: screenshots, newsletters, copies of the fraudulent marina access receipts, photos used in listings, and witness statements from confused residents. I even managed to get my hands on partial HOA budget records after one frustrated homeowner, sick of being lied to, sent me screenshots, and there it was, clear as day. Under community maintenance, coastal improvements, and marina upkeep were thousands of dollars in supposed expenses. Each one funneled directly to the HOA president's personal account. It was like watching a puzzle fall, perfectly into place. A puzzle built entirely of greed, lies, and arrogance. For a moment, I actually thought about blackmailing her, sending an email with all the evidence attached and demanding she resign quietly, stop her nonsense, and refund the residents she'd conned. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, why should I play it small? So instead, I went big. I sent every piece of evidence to the State Consumer Protection Agency, and while I was at it, I CC'd the entire HOA board. If she wanted to play games, she could deal with the fallout. Turns out the rest of the board had been completely in the dark. Within a week, they held an emergency meeting, one the president didn't even bother showing up for. Not long after, her house had a for sale sign in the yard. She packed up and vanished. The HOA board sent out an official apology, admitting financial discrepancies and promising refunds for anyone who had paid those fake marina fees. Some residents were furious. One guy told me he'd planned his whole summer around using community boat slips that didn't even exist. Another said he'd hosted a housewarming party, bragging about having access to the private marina. The county's now investigating her financial records, and last I heard, a prosecutor's office is looking into criminal charges. Good riddance. Since then, things have finally calmed down. The new HOA board reached out to me, politely this time, asking if I'd be open to letting neighborhood residents legitimately rent slips at the marina under a proper written agreement. We drew up a fair deal that keeps my business separate and transparent. Now, everything's back to normal. My new boat still rests right where it belongs, and every morning I sit on the dock with my coffee, watching the sun bounce off the water. I still have to scrub seagull droppings off the deck. That part hasn't changed. But at least now I can do it in peace. Sometimes I see a few of the HOA residents walking by, pausing to look at my boat. Maybe they're thinking about the chaos that once unfolded here. Or maybe they're just admiring the view. Either way, I smile. Because this marina, my marina, finally belongs to me again. And speaking of ownership and revenge, wait till you hear the next story. It's about a landlord who gets the ultimate payback against his nightmare tenants. You don't want to miss it. The woman who lived there before was something of a local legend. An art teacher turned business owner who ran one of those paint and sip studios long before they became trendy. After years of helping others discover their creative side, she retired and devoted her time to painting commissions and restoring old furniture. She was one of those genuinely kind souls, always smiling, even when she had every reason not to. I'll admit I hadn't always been the best neighbor at first. My old truck was loud, and she'd gently complain when I came barreling down the road late at night. But once we talked it out, we became good friends. She'd been in that house since the mid-'80s. It was her home, her studio, her sanctuary, filled with hand-painted murals that transformed every wall into a fairy tale. The previous landlord had allowed her complete creative freedom, as long as she didn't paint the exterior. There was even a mutual understanding that one day the home would be hers officially, but fate can be cruel. The landlord passed away before anything was finalized, and his children inherited the property. That's when things started to unravel. One of the sons came by to inspect the place with his daughter, and she instantly fell in love with it. The whimsical murals, the cottage facade, the charm of it all. They decided they wanted the house for her. My neighbor didn't have a formal lease, which made it easy for them to push her out. Their excuse? The damaging paint on the interior walls. She was heartbroken. But as luck would have it, she found another place just in time, a beautiful property out of state with a built-in art studio that seemed meant for her. Before leaving, she thought about keeping the old house's cottage-like look intact, but my buddy offered to restore it for her free of charge. He just bought a new paint sprayer and wanted to practice. Plus, his friend, a landscaper, is offered to help fix up the yard. She agreed, grateful for the help, and within a week, we moved all her furniture into storage. My friend even let her stay in his guest house while she painted a mural for him as a thank you. Once the house was cleared, the transformation began. The next week, every inch of wall was sanded down. The once vibrant murals, from fairy tale forests to Disney-inspired skylines, were reduced to smudges of dull color. My friend, being the perfectionist he is, masked every surface with care and primed the place with his new industrial sprayer. It worked like magic. One pass, and years of art were gone under a sea of white primer. Then came what we jokingly call Rebecca condition. That's what we name every house flipper's soulless design. Sterile white walls, dull gray trim, and generic dark flooring. My friend replicated that aesthetic perfectly. The result? Every bit of personality was erased. The vibrant storybook home was now lifeless. Every cabinet, wall, and molding dipped in the same dismal shade of gray. Even the wooden details and switch covers got the treatment. When I stepped inside afterward, it felt eerie, like walking through a ghost of what once was. The heart of the home had been replaced with something corporate and cold. My friend's landscaper finished things off outside, ripping out the whimsical cottage-style decor. He replaced everything with gravel, a boulder, and some sad-looking sand patches. Zero charm, zero soul. A few months later, I returned to the neighborhood to fix a few things at another house. Out of curiosity, I looked over at my old neighbor's place. It was still empty. I asked the guy next door if anyone had moved in yet. He said a moving truck had shown up earlier that week but left without unloading. I can only imagine the daughter's face when she stepped into what she thought was going to be her dream art house, only to find a gray, lifeless box that looked like every other flipped home in the suburbs. Somehow, I think that's what poetic justice looks like. And if you enjoyed that little dose of petty neighbor revenge, make sure to hit the like button and drop a comment below. It helps out the channel more than you think. Now, on to the next one. A malicious compliance story titled, "You Want Me to Answer Your Office Phone While I'm Working From Home?" This one's about a guy named Mark who once ran a small home-based computer repair business. Mark and his wife had lived in their home for over a decade, and back then, before everyone carried a cell phone, their landline was everything. Mark worked the late shift from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., so his customers could drop off their computers after work and pick them up the next morning. It was a simple setup that worked beautifully, until a new doctor opened up shop in town with a phone number nearly identical to Mark's. The only difference? One single digit. At first, it wasn't a big deal. A few wrong numbers here and there. Mark would politely redirect callers, figuring it would fade out. But as the doctor's practice grew and gained referrals, those mistaken calls started coming in around the clock. Mornings, nights, weekends, holidays. It got so bad that Mark had to unplug the phone just to have dinner in peace or get a few hours of sleep. Worse yet, Mark had 3 teenage daughters who were dating at the time, and not having a working phone at night was nerve-wracking. So, he called the doctor's office, explained the issue, and kindly asked them to change their number since his business had the original first. The doctor's response, a smug brush-off. He said changing the number would be too expensive and inconvenient. New stationery, updated advertising, revised patient records. His advice to Mark was simply, do your best. The calls will stop eventually. Mark took a deep breath and said, all right, Doc, I'll take care of it. And boy, did he ever. From that moment on, Mark started handling every mistaken call himself, in his own special way. When someone called about a cough or mild fever, he'd cheerfully say, sounds serious, better come in today. Someone else called saying they needed physicals for their kids. Perfect. We can take them all this afternoon. Sniffles? You better get checked out right now. Let's just say that soon, the doctor's waiting room was full of very confused patients wondering why they didn't have actual appointments. Whatever the issue was, Mark decided to have a little fun with the situation. He started booking appointments for every single person who called his number, thinking it was the doctor's office. Each caller was thrilled that the doctor was so accommodating. Of course we can see you today, Mark would say cheerfully. We take all insurance plans. Just come right in. He even scheduled half a dozen routine checkups for Friday at 4:30 p.m., right before the weekend. By Monday morning, the real doctor's office was in complete chaos. Patients were showing up demanding appointments that didn't exist, claiming Mark himself had booked them. Furious and exhausted, the doctor called Mark, practically begging him to stop the madness. Mark calmly replied, I'll stop when you change your number. Sure enough, by the end of that week, the doctor had a brand new phone line, and peace returned to Mark's household. Now, on to the next story. This one's a perfect mix of irony, humility, and good old-fashioned karma. My father always taught me the value of investments and how patience pays off. I hold a real estate license, but most of my income comes from rental properties and land ownership. Still, my father also drilled humility into me. I never flaunt my wealth. I live modestly, drive a normal car, and dress casually. That humility has served me well, until one day it caused a rather ridiculous misunderstanding. A friend of mine had recently moved into an upscale gated community, one of the fanciest in the Philippines, and invited me over to see his new house. I figured I'd take a day off work and hang out. The land that this entire community sat on, I actually owned it through my company, but I wasn't there to brag. I was just wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals. At one point, I remembered that I'd left my friend's housewarming gift in my car, which was parked a few minutes away in the guest parking area. As I walked back toward his house, a woman stopped me. You already know the type. Prim and proper, designer bag, and attitude to match. I don't think I've seen you here before, she said, narrowing her eyes. Who are you, and what are you doing in this neighborhood? I smiled politely and replied, just visiting a friend, but that wasn't good enough. She looked me up and down, clearly judging my simple outfit. You're lying. What's in that bag? This is a private community. We have rules. Trying to keep things calm, I said, I really am visiting my friend. Please, have a nice day. Then I tried to walk away. Stop right there or I'm calling security, she barked. I sighed, realizing she was serious. Sure enough, she dialed up security, reporting a suspicious man trespassing. When the guard arrived, I stood there patiently as she ranted about me being a danger to the neighborhood. The security guard inspected my bag, saw it was just a bottle of wine and a small gift box, and politely told her, "Ma'am, he's clearly just visiting someone. You're the only one causing a disturbance." That didn't sit well with her. Face red and fists clenched, she shouted, "If you don't do your job, I'll call the police myself." And that's exactly what she did. By the time the police showed up, my friend had come outside wondering what was taking me so long. I explained everything to the officers, and even invited them to search me and my car just to end this nonsense. My friend confirmed that I was his guest. But Karen, yes, she was a full-blown Karen, wouldn't back down. "Look at him," she yelled. "He looks poor. You expect me to believe someone dressed like that belongs here? This is a respectable community." That's when I finally lost my patience. "Funny you mention that," I said, "because I'm the property developer who owns this entire land. So technically, you're standing on my property right now." Her jaw dropped. The police officers exchanged looks, clearly trying not to laugh. They ended up warning her for wasting police resources and making false accusations. I thought that was the end of it until I posted the video I'd recorded of the entire exchange on social media. It went viral overnight. I didn't expect it to blow up, but the fallout was delicious. Apparently, my little encounter wasn't Karen's first offense. Other residents came forward with stories about her harassing neighbors, abusing her HOA authority, and acting like she owned the place. Within a week, the HOA board removed her from her position. A month later, she sold her house and moved out entirely. Now my friend says life in that community is much more peaceful. As for me, I learned that sometimes humility doesn't always protect you, but karma sure does. Before we wrap up, let's end with one more petty revenge gem. When I worked as a server years ago, a group of people I vaguely knew from high school decided to dine and dash at the restaurant. It wasn't my table, but I felt bad for the coworker, who got stuck covering the loss. Some restaurants make servers pay out of pocket for walkouts. I recognized a few of them, so after they left, I did a quick search on Facebook. Found their profiles easily. I sent them messages saying, "Hey, I saw what you did. You should come back and pay your bill." They read the message and ignored me. So I took it one step further. I messaged their moms. Within an hour, I got replies from 2 of them. "Thank you for letting me know," one mom wrote. "Don't worry, I'll handle this." I'm not sure if they ever came back to pay, but I do know that the next time I saw those guys, they couldn't even make eye contact. My server friend got a good laugh out of it, too. The total bill was around $70. Not much money, but enough to ruin someone's night. And honestly, calling their moms was the most satisfying way to deal with dine-and-dash losers. They got embarrassed, the restaurant got its justice, and I got a story I'll never forget. And that, my friends, is today's mix of malicious compliance, karma, and pure petty revenge. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you know. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next wild HOA and Reddit revenge tale.